Hey, everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room. Aaron and I have sat you down today because we want to go over, we've already hit an SR or special reconnaissance deep dive. We just recorded a combat control deep dive, and now we want to jump into a pararescue or a PJ deep dive. And honestly, there's a lot to cover here. So I've got... for as much as you hate to hear this, I got the man, myth, the legend.
God,
I couldn't even.
Man, it just you just bottomed out the entire thing. Even I didn't sign on. The one guy that's supposed to resonate. Who did we get? Is somebody else coming on? Is a good PJ going to be here to talk about this stuff? Did we get somebody that's respected in the career field, or is it me? That's not a good idea. Yeah. What a stupid thing. I was going to say that, Daddy Peaches and Uncle Aaron are here to give you a talk, but I'm more like a step uncle. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even like a nice, fun uncle that you see on like holidays. I'm like the guy that married your mom's sister and you're not super excited about it, Great,
he's coming over for Thanksgiving and I'm sure he's going to be angry.
Great, I'm sure he's going to be mad and he's going to hit 7 Coors Lights deep and he's going to start saying stuff that makes grandma uncomfortable.
Then he's going to talk about politics.
Of course, man, nailed it. Boy, you really painted me into a corner here. I got nowhere to go now.
All right. So, PJs, there's a lot to PJs. They are not a simple animal, but I think one of the biggest things that we can talk about starting off, and it's just to help reemphasize the process. So I know that I want to be a PJ. That's my lifelong dream. That's what I want to do. Where do I start at?
Yeah, so start as always. You're going to go to airforce.com or you're going to go to appspecwar.com. Those are the two websites where you can start off, and you're going to start getting your knowledge base together. The first thing is you have to do on this step. You can study all you want. We're going to talk about what books you can read. We're going to talk about what other mental preparation steps you can take, physical preparation steps, all these other things, right? But to start this process in earnest, if you're serious about this, you have to go talk to a recruiter. We're going to put the age out here, right? I think that we have settled on this program, on the One's Ready podcast and amongst the team. I think that we have said 17, senior year of high school. That's the sweet spot. If you were no kidding looking at becoming a pararescueman, right? So we're not talking about a crow. Being a crow, you got a whole college career to think about, right? So other than going to a service academy, other than going to the Air Force Academy, you don't make that crow decision, that combat rescue officer decision. You don't make that decision till college, right? So you got some time. If you're talking about no kidding, you've always grown up, you've already got the shirt, maybe you've already got a green feet tattoo, it's huge, it's on your chest, you're ready to go. If you want to be a PJ, the first thing you got to do is talk to a recruiter, right? So you're going to go to airforce.com, you're going to go to appspecwar.com, and you're going to find the link where you can, no kidding, put in your zip code and you can talk to a recruiter. So step one, as always, to get this process going in earnest, is to talk to a recruiter. We get this feedback all the time where people are like, listen, I've been training for this long. I've been doing this. Well, you've been doing it by yourself. You don't know what you're doing right. You don't know what you're doing wrong. You don't even know if you qualify. It is very hard to get into the Air Force comparatively to the other sister services. It's very tough. We have higher standards. We have higher educational requirements. We have a higher tolerance for I said that incorrectly. We have a lower tolerance for legal problems or issues that you may have run into, right? We have lower tolerances for surgical procedures and things that you may have in your background, or maybe some things that you've been diagnosed with. So in order to make sure that you're doing this the most efficient way, go talk to a recruiter first and get into the system and actually go, okay, you're going to need to take an ASVAB. You're going to need to have an initial medical clearance. The recruiter is going to need to do a background check to make sure that your finances are in order, that you qualify for a secret clearance, that you have all these other things, right? So don't waste your time on this one. If you're serious about this and you're 17 years old and a senior in high school, that is the sweet spot. Okay. And any older, obviously, if you're older than that, if you've done another thing and you're ready to get in here, go talk to a recruiter is step one. So step one, find a recruiter. Step two, actually go talk to them. Schedule some time to sit down with them and go, hey, do I qualify? Because there's a good possibility that you waste, 6 months of your life training for a thing only to go in and have you go, oh, this is a disqualifying condition due to this medication you have to take daily. I'm sorry, we can't take you. So step one, Peaches, go to a recruiter, do your research, find a recruiter, and then go from there. All the other stuff is not necessarily that important. It doesn't matter if you can name every single Silver Star winner in the pararescue career field. It doesn't matter if you're crushing the IFT as a 15-year-old in high school. Okay, like
which is awesome if you
awesome. Good job for you. Yeah, good on you. If you're just absolutely destroying it, heck yeah, good job, man. That's dope. 17 years old, senior.
Yeah, and the one thing that you said that I want to hit on is the medical stuff or the background. Like if you're a 17-year-old, or it doesn't even matter if you're 17, if you are looking to do this and you're like, oh well, I've got a jaded past, or I used some marijuana at some point, or I've got this medical thing. Don't listen to anybody on the internet.
No, not even us. We won't even tell you an answer. If you DM us, we always say the same thing. I don't know. You need to talk to your recruiter. And this stuff changes almost day to day. And I'm not saying the regulations change day to day, but different doctors have different tolerances for what they'll give you a waiver for. Different recruiters are able to, they know the process. They know their specific local processes. They know what the Air Force Recruiting Service is looking for. They know what MEPS is going to tolerate and not tolerate in certain areas of the nation. They can help guide you through this. Don't listen to anybody on the internet. Yeah, and
and not even if they are a doctor or
a doctor,
medical professional,
or an operator, or they're very smart.
Right, because they don't have your whole background. They don't have any of that. So don't index yourself before you even get started. Make a medical professional tell you that you cannot do it. Anyway, enough of that.
Right.
So you hit a recruiter, then you're going to get your initial physical, and then you're going to into development. And Aaron, you already talked about it, but it's usually it's a 6-month process, so it's not like you're going to go in, sign papers on a Friday, and you're going to ship on a Monday. So you got time. Go to those development sessions, get in there and get better, surround yourself with like-minded people. And then you actually go and you ship. And then you're going to go to an Air Force Special Warfare basic military training flight where you're going to get extra food, extra sleep, extra time to train. You're also going to be surrounded still with like-minded individuals. There's, was it five ship days, 5 ships a year, I believe is what it is.
Yeah, 5 ships a year.
Yeah. So, you're going to be, if you're in the Discord or you're in your development session, there's a good chance that you're going to ship with some of those folks that you've talked to and that you've trained to or trained with. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We leave basic training and then we go to where?
So we're going to go to SWCC, and I want to keep everybody in mind. This is a new change that's been made. Like, we're making this episode for y'all as if you've never heard of what being a PJ is, right? So when you enlist, you actually don't enlist to be a PJ. You enlist in the Special Warfare Operator Enlistment Vector Program. They call it SWCC. So everybody goes into a big bucket. That's where your flight at BMT comes from. The Air Force Special Warfare Flight are all 4 career fields, and they're all part of the SWCC program. Unless you're going Guard or Reserve. If you're going into the Guard or Reserve, you are signing up to go into that unit specifically for that job. And that's a little bit different. They have a different selection. If you go to one of the Guard or Reserve units, if you go to Cocoa Beach down at Patrick Space Force Base, if you go knock on the door and say, hey, I want to be a PJ, they put you through their own internal selection. The same would happen. Alaska has a different selection. New York has a different selection. DM has a different selection. If you go through and you get picked up there, then you're going to show up down to Special Warfare Candidate Course, which is what we're going to talk about now. So you'll go to BMT with everybody else in your AFSPEC War Training Flight, and then you'll go over to the Special Warfare Candidate Course, and you know that you're going to be a PJ if you're Guard or Reserve. Everybody else goes in to the same bucket, right, to SWCC, and we show up over to the Special Warfare Candidate Course. It used to be called the Prep Course. It's an 8-week course designed to physically and mentally prepare you for ANS. So it's no kidding, 8 weeks of you learning the test. So at SWCC, what you're going to do is you're going to have your initial fitness test coming in. They're going to get a ton of data from you from not only your fitness test, right? Run, swim, cals, weights, the whole gamut of physical expression. You're going to do psychological in-processing and testing. They're going to look at your nutrition. They're going to look at your behavior and your output at BMT. They're going to look at everything that you've got in your past, and they're going to come up with as close to an individualized plan as they can for you specifically to get through. You're going to do 1 rep maxes in everything that you do. You're going to be put on a specific program and a specific routine. You're going to have wearables that you wear. They can tell how good you're sleeping. They can tell how good you are working out. They can tell how the workouts are stressing you. There are run coaches and swim coaches and rucking coaches and psychologists and nutritionists. You're going to have float tanks. You're going to have the world at your disposal, all to help you get through assessment and selection. So as you show up there, everybody is still in the SWCC program about 2.5 weeks. So between, the beginning of SWCC through about the 3rd week of SWCC, you're going to get briefings about combat control, TAC-P, special reconnaissance, and pararescue. There's going to be a whole mix of people there with you, right? So everybody that shows up to SWCC usually has an idea of what they want to do. Some people go in blind and they're like, I want to be a special operator in the Air Force, and they'll change their mind a bunch of times. They'll be like, well, I want to be a TAC-P guy. And then they show up to basic and they're like, wait a second, I didn't know that control did this cool part of the job. I didn't know they did airfield seizure. I want to be a controller. And then they think they want to be a controller for a couple weeks, which is dope. And then they look at pararescue and they go, oh, wait a second. Pararescue is actually something that I want to do. You're going to be given your opportunity. That's one end of the spectrum, right? So one end of the spectrum of, I don't know what I want to do. And then all the way over to, I'm positive I want to be a PJ. I've never wanted to be anything else. The other career fields are awesome, but I want to be a PJ. That's kind of like your range of folks, right? You're going to be given the opportunity at SWCC to raise your hand and say, okay, I want to be assessed and selected for this career field. And you call your shot, right? So during SWCC, you call your shot, you raise your hand, you say, I want to be a PJ. They mark down your little name, they mark down your little AFSC, and that's what you're going to go forward. At the end of SWCC, there's a couple different really cool parts of SWCC that they've built in. There's what they call the PRT. So the PRT, the physical readiness test phase, something. I'll have to figure out what PRT means. I'll Google it because I'm stupid.
Boy. You know how I am with acronyms.
I did. Yeah, your acronym. Yeah, your TLA acronym stuff is not good. So basically, it's I believe like a week, 3 or 4 days of heavy physical testing and stress inoculation. So I won't get into it too much. It's a really cool part of the program that you're gonna find out at SWCC, but it's a huge confidence builder. It leads right into the CFT, which is called the candidate fitness test. So the 3 fitness tests we have, and we can put a marker in here for the episode that we did on the 3 fitness tests and what we think your numbers should be as you go on. There's an initial fitness test. There's the candidate fitness test, which is you're going to take at SWCC, is kind of your graduation event, your candidate fitness test. And that gets you all the way to the OFT, or the operator fitness test. And that's the tier 2 fitness test that we all take. So those are the 3 tests that you'll be acclimatized to during your time in the pipeline. But you get out of SWCC and you're ready to go right across, get on that bus, go right across the base, and you're going to report to assessment and selection for that AFSC, which you've declared in SWCC. So far, we've talked to a recruiter. We hit our development sessions like we're supposed to be. We've crushed our IFT. We're ready to get into the Air Force. Basic training is behind us with a bunch of people that we met, through the Air Force Special Warfare training flights that we got to be a part of. And, we talked to operators. We figured out what we wanted to do. We're physically and mentally prepared. The ins and outs of what you're supposed to do. And then you show up for A&S day 1.
Yeah. Then you go through your A&S. Like, I'll not to try and skip through some of this, but like
we've hit this so many times. Yeah.
So you're going to hit A&S, and then, you get selected out of A&S, and then you're going to go to your pre-dives. And again, this is all the commonalities between, PJ, CCT, and SR. So all this is the same right now.
Right.
So you're with your team, you're hitting your A&S, your pre-dive, your dive, your airborne, survival, military free fall. And then depending on, commonality wise, I'll hit that later.
Yeah. Let's hit. So A&S, there's 3 possibilities, right? Like A&S is about assessment selection. And what I want to say is, man, there's a huge problem that we see, or a huge issue that we see when we talk to y'all, when we talk to you folks. It's you're thinking too far down the pipeline. People are talking about study and paramedic stuff before they've ever gone to A&S, right? A&S is a majority land-based, attributes-based assessment model, right? So when people text us and they're DM us and they're like, hey, I'm getting ready for A&S, I'm doing 10 underwaters on this interval, and I'm tying my knots underwater. Like, that's a pre-dive exercise. You might not even make it there, right? So assessment and selection, 4 weeks long, and there's always 3 possibilities getting out of ANS, right? So you can get not selected. Well, you can quit, right? So that's number 1, you can quit, and then you can either be invited back or you won't, right? We're not going to focus on that because you're not going to quit. That's the expectation. Number 2 is you make it through and you get non-selected. So there's a possibility where you can make it through that first 4 weeks, and something that the staff saw, whether it be the operators, the psychologist, or all of them, they looked at you and they thought, hey, you're not ready at this time, or you're not ready, or you're not a candidate that we want to pick up, right? So that's kind of option number 2 out of assessment selection. And then option number 3 that has one subcategory is you get selected. If you perform, if you want to go in to be a PJ and you perform and you're in the top 10% of your class, I don't know what the number is. The point is that there's a certain number of PJs that we need per class. Let's say that number is 10. If you're not in that top 10, there's a possibility that they can be like, hey, we're going to select you, but we don't have a spot for you because you didn't perform high enough. So we're going to offer you some other career fields. And then it's on you to decide, do I want to be a special operator, or did I only want to be a PJ? And that's totally on you. That happens so little of the time, we almost don't even bother mentioning it. However, it is a possibility, so we tell you about it. Bottom line here, go in, perform, be undeniable, and make sure that you are the number 1 candidate, and you're going to get whatever job you want. In this case, it'll be pararescue. And then we move on to pre-dive. Okay, this is a little bit different than we've done it before. INDOC used to be 10 weeks long, and it used to be essentially 10 weeks of pre-dive. You'd have pre-dive practice every single day in the pool. It was run, cows, works, grass and gorillas, some classes, but you always had a fin and your water con session.
Grass and gorilla drills.
Grass and gorillas, get up for it. Forward rolls, 600 meters, go.
The side, just the amount of rolls, and I just...
well, that is like, I don't know. I've got a couple deployments. I have never once done a log roll in order. Like, that has never been tactically appropriate for me to do.
Are you kidding me? I'm like Glock 19 rolling freaking.
So you'll get over to pre-dive, right? So you get out. It used to be 10 weeks of just pre-dive. We've changed it up because we have streamlined the pipeline in such a way where, again, everybody's together. So all 4 career fields assessed and selected, right? After you get assessed and selected, and this happens from a Friday to a Monday, so it's going to feel like one big course anyway. So you graduate ANS, you get selected. It feels good for a weekend. And then you report to pre-dive, okay? So you report to the pool. There's going to be a little bit of a mindset shift. You're not going to be treated like as much of a candidate, right? Like you've earned a little something. You've been assessed and selected. Like, the attrition rate is still the highest in the DoD. It's still the hardest career field to get into. When you do that, the instructors are going to acknowledge that a little bit. And as long as you're there to train, you show up motivated with the right gear, the right attitude, you're going to get a little bit more freedom during pre-dive, and it's going to be great. We know the pre-dive instructors. We know what the curriculum looks like. It's awesome. If you do that, if you go, like, to quote Mr. Capobianco, who runs the show down there, if you go there and you do your job, you'll be respected as a professional, and you'll be able to get through pre-dive, right? Pre-dive is where we have all of the water con stuff, right? From underwaters to mask and snorkel recovery to ditch and dawn to buddy breathing to drown proofing to the alternate water con events. And there's a ton of alternate water con events to include doom ups, 10 ups, crossovers, all kinds of stuff. Underwater basket weaving.
We should actually make up some names here. Just
we
people
should.
Going.
We should, yeah.
So God, I've never heard of that one.
There's 2-man expository. Like, 2-man expository is really, really tough. There's the 75-meter split event. The 75-meter split event is actually really, really damaging. That gets a lot of people to quit. Not nearly as bad as the surface, subsurface interval training that you'll have to do. That is, man, that's a tough one. And when you put your tanks on, oof, look out, But the bottom line here is, like, pre-dive is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is preparing you for combat dive school in the Air Force. Now, you can still go to other schools. We'll talk about it here in a second, but think of this as a building block, right? BMT is building you up to get you ready to go to SWCC. SWCC is getting you ready to go to assessment selection. Assessment selection is getting you ready to go to pre-dive. Pre-dive naturally leads into the Air Force Combat Diver course down in Panama City, Florida, where you're going to go with other Air Force folks, Air Force only. I think they have sister services every once in a while. They'll show up in a class, but essentially it's going to be all AFSPEC War Airmen. You're going to show up to Panama City and you're going to go through Combat Diver to include. So it's open circuit and closed circuit training down in Panama City, Florida. And it is not easy at all. I don't know.
It's also your first TDY too.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
so it's kind of your first TDY. So it's your first time that being an airman, being in the Air Force, where you're kind of trusted to go off on your own and do a training event where you're not in the confines of the kind of safety blanket that is Lackland Air Force Base.
Yeah, for sure.
It's also, I want to say it's your first opportunity, but it's an opportunity for you to make a mistake. It's Panama City. Mm-hmm. It's a party town. So depending on the time of year you go,
you're gonna have weekends off. You can walk. I can tell you this from personal experience. You can walk right off that base, and you can find a nice little spot to grab a beer, to have a nice dinner. Like Uber is a thing. You're going to be able to find a ride to go do this stuff. The situation exists, but TDY means temporary duty, guys and gals. When you were there, you got to stay focused. Because it would really, and we've all seen it. We all have a story about somebody that went to dive school and made a terrible decision and then left because of disciplinary issues. Like imagine going through everything you went through. You're focusing on this task now for more than a year. I'll guarantee, from the time that you've decided to the time you get to dive school is not going to be under a year. It's just not. You're going to be in development program for probably a minimum of 6 months. And then you're going to ship. If you ship right away at 8 months, basic is 2 months long, so that gets to 10. SWCC is another 2 months long, so that gets to your year. ANS is another 4 weeks, so that's another month. So that's another, you're a minimum a year and 2 months before you show up and you go TDY, and that's with no breaks. That's as fast as it possibly can be. So
with that said, don't do anything stupid to jeopardize your chances of becoming a PJ or any of the career fields, really, because that is a for sure showstopper.
Amen.
And even if you happen to not get kicked out or moved on to a different career field, if you just happen to stay, that does follow you for a bit. I'm not, and again, I'm not saying that we're a one strike Air Force kind of thing, but when you are in a training environment, it is a lot stricter, and they do not mess around when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Nope. So, no tolerance for it.
Nope. So you'll finish dive school and you roll back to Lackland. That's kind of your permanent station where you're kind of hub and spoke where you're going to go back to, and then you're going to go TDY to places. So you'll go to dive school, you'll come back and you'll hit your airborne school. So 3 weeks out in Fort Benning, Georgia, 34-foot tower, 250-foot tower. If you're lucky, not really. You're not going to be lucky.
Lucky, right? You're not really that lucky. Dude, I watched a guy off the 250-foot tower. There was a car that was parked. The winds were just a little bit high. He was in my class. He let go from that tower and he went right across the street. There's cars that park right across the street there at the barracks. This was in 2000. This is 2003 or whatever. Whenever I went to airborne, 2004. Whenever I went to airborne school, I don't remember. I'd have to look. Anyway, point being, remember the old Blazers? They had the really big back window, like the full scale back one. He went right into that window and just broke the crap out of it, just shattered it. And it was one of the black hat instructors cars. It was like one of those old school Blazers. And he fell, like he came off the 250-foot tower. For those that don't know, huge towers. They've got 4 prongs. And basically what they do is there's a little winch and they can bring a person. It's got like the parachute is already fully inflated, right? So it's got like this thing where it all hooks in, and there's a device that lets the parachute go, and then you see somebody essentially parachute. They show you how to do a parachute landing fall. It's a student. Well, if the winds are a little bit out of tolerance, it can blow you right across the street, and that's what happened. So the 250-foot tower, that's why we're joking. It's not a fun thing, and you're not lucky.
It's a terrible design, and it's
the dumbest.
And if it's a little windy at all, you're going to get blown right into the tower. But if you want an idea what it looks like, obviously you can Google it, but you can also watch We Were Soldiers, and before they ship to Vietnam, like that's in the background. Those are the actual towers.
Those are the actual towers. One thing too about this. So pararescue, the pipeline, there's a very little nuanced difference between everybody else, is that you are actually going to be owned by two separate squadrons during this time. So right now, the 350th owns everybody. The 350th Special Warfare Training Squadron are the people that own assessment selection and pre-dive and basically manage all of the students in the pipeline, right? We'll talk later about where you're going to go, but for right now, you're owned by those folks down at Lackland. Sometime after pre-dive, depending on phase, you are going to have the ability to move your family down. So this is where the families will PCS down to Lackland. So somewhere in here, for those of you that are married and that have kids, you're going to have the opportunity to move your families down. We're not giving you a firm answer because it's a case-by-case basis. So they figure out, what schools are you going to? When is it right to PCS your family? Because you're going to have to take a break from your pipeline to PCS your family down. There's really no way for you to get your family down and get your household goods received and get everybody into a house and get everybody settled and you still going TDY, right? So for those of you that come in the pipeline married and come in the pipeline with kids, there's going to be a time, and it starts now, that you can get your family there, but understand that's going to cause a delay in your pipeline because, like everything else in the military, there's a process to it, right? So at this point, you're going to airborne school, SEER school, Dunker training, free fall if you can get it, and there's no set progression. The set progression is BMT, SWCC, ANS, pre-dive, dive. After that, you start playing the game of, is there a course seat here? Can I go to this school? Sometimes people have problems with their physicals where they can't go to free fall right away. Sometimes, somebody twists an ankle and they can go to SEER, but they can't go to free or airborne, or vice versa, whatever. The point is that you're going to hit those associated schools as they come up. And you'll do that with all of the other career fields. So this is a great time, as Peach has mentioned. You're going to go TDY. You're going to meet different folks. You're going to meet, oh, you were 2 classes ahead of me. That's really cool. What's up? Oh, you're a controller. I was in airborne with you. It's really cool to be here in SEER with you, so on and so forth. And you're going to start kind of like expanding that network. And that's really cool. So then you'll see dudes back down at JBSA. You'll see them in the hallways. You'll be like, oh, what's up? I went to dive school with you. Hey, how's it going? Oh, hey, what's up, man? I went to airborne with you with this SR guy. So
it's cool because you're going to have you almost automatically get along with these dudes.
100%.
And dudes that because you have that shared suck, that kind of common baseline where what each of you have been through, and it's a like-minded personality. And I mean, I can't tell you how many controllers, PJs, SR, TAC Ps that I've met that I never met, and we just boom hit it off immediately and
right away.
It's one of those things. So
yep.
So that's all the commonalities kind of stuff. But then we also PJs diverge. So at what point do PJs diverge from everybody else?
Yeah. So the first one is going to be in what they call MP3, right? So the Modernized Pararescue Provider Program down at Joint Base San Antonio. So the paramedic portion and the medical portion, and this includes trauma medicine as far as advanced tactical practitioner, right? So some of the things that you learn inside of the military, ATP is like the military version of being an advanced tactical practitioner, or an advanced provider of medicine. You start getting those baselines down at San Antonio now, as opposed to Kirtland. We used to do everything in-house at Kirtland. You would PCS to Kirtland essentially right away. The way the pipeline used to flow for pararescue is you would go assessment selection, pre-dive, dive, and when you got done with dive, you'd PCS to Kirtland right away. And this is where we start talking about changing squadrons, right? That's no more. So the MP3 program, or the Modernized Pararescue Provider Program, is now down at Joint Base San Antonio. So you enter into your medical training there when it's appropriate. And this, by the way, this may, if there's a bunch of course seats, because there's a certain amount of course seats, like there's a contractor that runs, like a large entity that runs this program separately, right? And it's stock full of, past and present PJs that are there working. So you're going to have gold standard instructions. Great program. If your course seat pops up and they're like, hey, we can get you into this program now, as opposed to going to airborne or as opposed to going to SEER or whatever, there is a possibility that you can get into MP3 kind of in the mix of all those other things. There's good things and there's bad things to that. The good thing about it is that it's the next longest portion of your training. So it takes total about 8 months. So we're going to be able to take you from a person with a high school diploma all the way through nationally registered paramedic in about 8 months. And that includes going TDY to larger trauma centers to actually do your clinicals. So yes, you can do your clinicals in San Antonio, but you also get sent to places like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You get to go to Louisville. You get to go to Birmingham, Alabama. And you may be asking yourself, why am I going there? Well, because it has the highest trauma rates in the world. So when you go to Birmingham, Alabama to work at UAB, you're seeing exactly what you're going to see on the battlefield, which is gunshots, explosions, knife wounds, really sick populations of people. Birmingham, Alabama is the largest trauma one in the entire tri-state area down there. So no kidding, 3 states worth of people, of trauma victims, and that's car crashes, rollovers, everything that you could think of. They all get flown into UAB. That's why we have our medical program there. We've talked about our special operations surgical teams, or the SOST. That's actually one of the places where the SOST lives and works because there's so much trauma that's there. Philadelphia is another place where you can go. I did my clinicals in Philly. Same reason, because unfortunately for that area, there's a lot of shootings that happen. There's a lot of gun violence, a lot of knife violence, a lot of trauma that happens inside of the Philly metro area. And that's where you're going to go in order to get that. So all that being said, that takes about 8 months to get through. You have to go separately through your EMT basic, like your basic EMT stuff. And then you go through your paramedic. You have to pass basic and get nationally registered as a basic. And then you go through your paramedic through NAEMT, and you get nationally registered as a paramedic. And then there's an additional dirt medicine sort of primer that they're giving to you there. So all said and done, MP3 takes you about 8 months. So for that entire period, you're going to be living and working down at Joint Base San Antonio under the 350th Special Warfare Training Squadron. So, all of the entities over there on the Chapman Annex, right up the hill, living in the dorms, living and breathing with your team. And it is tough. The MP3 program, it's the first time where you're going to have to be a really good adult learner. Up until this point, you've showed up, you've worn the right uniform, you physically performed, had the right gear, had a motivated attitude, cool. But you basically just ran in straight lines and did some pull-ups and said some hoo-yahs, and that was basically it. Now you're going to be expected to study. You have to learn anatomy and physiology. You have to learn complex body organ systems and interreactions, and you have to learn a ton of drugs. It's not just trauma drugs. You have to learn about specific populations, like treating children, treating old people, pregnant people, diseases that you've never, worked with before. They put a very high value on you knowing a whole lot of things, but focusing on trauma. The MP3 program is no joke. And it's really tough to get through. There is an attrition rate. The instructors are amazing at it. They've got a great percentage on passing it, but there are some people that don't make it. And the people that don't make it are the people that don't take it seriously from the very beginning.
Yeah. No thanks. I'm good.
Right. But
stick to CCT stuff.
I say it all the time. Like, I won't take away like everybody, TACP, CCT. You guys have things like, learning glide scopes and learning math and learning proper phraseology and learning, radio troubleshooting. Like that, it is really, really hard. And I couldn't do it. Like, I'll just tell you straight up, like, I don't have the ability to do what you guys do. Like, you just have an ability that I don't. That's why I'm not a controller. That's why I'm not a TACP guy. But I will tell you, there's something pretty hard about stopping a human from dying. And this is where pararescuemen really make their bread and butter. This is where we live. We have different medical capabilities than 18 Deltas or, Ranger medics. We have different medical capabilities, but they are exquisite in their own right. It's not good enough that we just access the patient, like that we just get to him. Oh no, there's a pilot that's trapped in their aircraft on a mountain that's above 10,000 feet. It's not good enough that we can just get there with our mountaineering skill, with our free fall skill, with our, all these other skills that we have. When you get there, you got to stop that human from dying. Like, that's the point. You got to make sure that they live to get them out. So you really start focusing on that here at the MP3 program. And that's the next step. And once you graduate that bad boy, you are one step closer to becoming a PJ.
Yeah. And really that's where the next divergence really comes from, is the Pararescue Apprentice course out in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yep.
Which phenomenal facility.
Amazing. Yeah.
Brand new ranges, advanced targeting, confined space rescue. Like, it's just, It's an incredible place.
State of the art. It's
Rich,
been the home.
You were an instructor out there for a little while.
I was, yeah. So here's where you're going to PCS, and this is where that one nuance takes place, right? While everybody else is going to stay owned by the 350th Special Warfare Training Squadron, so that's at Lackland. Well, the 351st Special Warfare Training Squadron's in Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, and you'll actually PCS for this course. So when you have the rest of your pipeline done, and there's one small exception, we've been having problems getting people to free fall, so you may PCS to Kirtland without your free fall spot. That may be a thing, right? So this changes, it feels like every week. We have a bottleneck that kind of holds people up from getting that course seat in free fall, but let's pretend like you got the free fall spot, no big deal. And you're that tower of power, baby. You got those free fall wings, you got the airborne wings, you got your dive bubble on. You know, you're a A1C that every time you come into the gate, somebody looks at you, is like, what are you? And you're like, nothing, bro. Keep it to yourself. But you'll PCS to Kirtland. That means you, your whole family, if you have one, you guys are going to PCS to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you're going to report to the 351st Special Warfare Training Squadron for the Pararescue Apprentice course. I will tell you, the Pararescue Apprentice course, the students, the instructors, the staff, the entire area that is Kirtland Air Force Base, you are the gold standard for what's going on. I cannot speak highly enough. And it's partly because, cat's out of the bag. I was an instructor down there. I was, the op soup when I left. I have a high level of pride, not only in the facility, it's a world-class facility. The gym is going to blow your mind. It's some ridiculous amount of square footage. We have a separate building set up for combatives and other things. We have the leading edge of technology, both in, athletic trainers, cold tubs, red light therapy. There's a DARI screener. So if you don't know what a DARI screener is, it's essentially like 20 cameras that basically they have you go through a series of movements, and you're on a pad that senses pressure. You jump up and down, you do squats, you do certain moves, and the computer marks your body type and can tell you where you're weak. And it will tell you which joints you need to strengthen in order to prevent injury. So it literally will look at you squat and go, your left knee has a little bit of pronation, and we can see it through these 7 cameras that are looking at your knee. You need to do exercises to prevent lower leg injuries. And then it will give you exercises, and it feeds this in to the staff. The staff there is remarkable, from strength and conditioning coaches to psychologists, nutritionists. We are going to throw the kitchen sink at you to help you be the best, just biggest, strongest, fastest, hardest to kill human that you can possibly be to get you ready for the apprentice course, right? So you'll spend a little time. The apprentice course as it stands is 7 phases still. They're still running the same course, right? And the blocks will change, but we'll try to kind of do this in order. You'll go through mountaineering phase. So the mountaineering phase is world-class instruction in low, medium, and high angle technical rescue skills. This is both mountaineering. So mountaineering and walking on a mountain has its own challenges. Climbing rocks has its own challenges. But then high angle rescue and technical rescue is a completely different beast. When you're talking about confined spaces, when you're talking about true high angle suspended in a vertical environment on a rope systems that haul thousands of pounds of equipment, making rope bridges for people to traverse mountains, carrying patients in a mountainous environment is a challenge all into itself. And you're going to get that through the mountaineering section of the apprentice course, right? You're going to go through a weapons phase. You're going to learn everything from a familiarization on heavy weapons, 240, 249, 50. But it really focuses on your primary and your secondary weapon, right? Primary weapon being the M4, secondary weapon being the pistol. The instructors there, Rich Gipple, I love throwing his name out there. This guy has 30 years of experience. He started off as a CADM guy, but he basically worked for the Nellis rescue team. He was their weapons instructor for the last 10 years of his career. So really the last 2 decades, he has been going to advanced shooting school after advanced shooting school. He's one of the best instructors I've ever seen in the game. They've got a world-class shooter. Just randomly, one of the PJs happens to be the top shooter on the Air Force team. My boy CR. You're gonna get some of the best weapons instruction on the face of the planet in the weapons phase. There's an advanced employment phase where you're going to go out and you're going to learn. You're starting to put things together. So in the advanced employment phase, we're talking about working on a helicopter for the first time. We're talking about jumping into a tactical scenario for the first time. You know, at airborne school, you were just taught to fall out of the aircraft. Here, you're going to be taught to fall out of the aircraft with style. You're going to fall out of the aircraft close to your folks, you know, as a team, land as a team, how to tactically de-rig that chute, how to get your weapon up and in service, and how to move out. Your tactics phase is going to teach you how to move in all of the separate formations that you're going to need to. Tactics is your basic soldiering block. And it is going to, like, it includes mission planning. It includes full mission profiles. This is the first time you're going to get shot at. So there are going to be people that are shooting back at you. There's going to be an opposing force. You're going to have an actual mission that you have to plan for. You're going to feel like a PJ in this phase. I'll tell you from experience, you're going to have all your kit on just like you would in an actual combat environment. You're going to be treating patients. You're going to be doing direct action raids. You're going to be this is your first taste of CQC. And oh, by the way, there's a state of the art shoot house that we can manipulate the walls. There's lights, there's sound, there's smoke. It's day night compatible, meaning everything can do under NVGs. It's right there literally right out the back door of the schoolhouse on the same compound. And it's got video. So it's got 70 cameras. So I can pull up an iPad and I can show you, I can be like, hey, you went left as opposed to going right when you went in the store. And you're going to look at me as a student and you're going to be like, and I'm going to be like, it's here on the video, dog. So that's tactics, right? So you're going to get your first kind of like taste of tactics there. And then the medical phase. So the medical phase is the highest block of attrition inside of the apprentice course. The apprentice course has a great success rate, right? We tell students all the time, keep your nose clean, stay motivated, just do what we ask you to do, and you're going to graduate. However, some people don't. And medical phase is where usually where it gets them. Because this is the first time, like, you're already a paramedic. We're not teaching you basics of medicine. We're teaching you advanced combat medicine. And you have to do it all on your own in the back of a truck, in a helicopter simulator, there are helicopter hulls at Kirtland Air Force Base that we can attach to a truck, and it's exactly a helicopter on the inside. You know, none the wiser. And an instructor is going to drive you down a bumpy road, and you're going to be jostling around in the back, trying to stick an IV
give IVs
under NVGs in a completely dark environment. And that's an evaluation. People are going in it, and it's on a time limit. Like, you got to get it done. You better stick it. You better hit it. But it's tough. The medical phase is tough because you're being asked to put everything together, right? So as we get through all these phases, we got mountain, we got weapons, we got tactics, we got tech rescue, we've got advanced employment. So your air ops phase. I'm missing one, and I can't remember what it is.
I couldn't tell you.
I think, yeah. So we'll just say that there's 6. I don't know. We'll just make it up and say that we got them all. But you get I'm saying, so water operations is a little bit different. Water operations is the other phase that I get, but it was really advanced deployment. You'll get to go down to either Lake Havasu or any other area with water, and you're going to learn how to operate in the water as well, right? So you'll do your rigging alternate method boat training. So you're going to learn how to de-rig a boat once it gets thrown into the water. You're going to hoist in and out of the water. You're going to employ via both jumping and helicopter work into the water to learn how to work in that environment as well. So that's a pretty fun time. If you're, the first time that you've ever got to jump out of a helicopter into water is always a memorable time and pretty exciting. So you get all that done and you're ready for what they call the final evaluation phase, right? So the final evaluation phase is 14 days, back to back to back, 24 hours a day of you getting evaluated on being a PJ. You're going to put everything together. So in the apprentice course, you go through, you learn your mission planning, you learn the tech rescue, you learn how to tie rope systems, you learn how to do all of these other parts, right? And the entire pipeline we've been building to this, where we're giving you individual skills, right? Individual free fall skills. You can jump out of an aircraft with a bunch of gear on, not hurt yourself, land where you're supposed to. Awesome. Airborne, same thing. Medicine, same thing. You can do the baseline. And the final evaluation phase, the pararescue instructors are going to ask you to look like a PJ and put it all together. So you're not just going to be mission planning. You're not just going to be mission planning, then jumping. You're not just going to be mission planning, then jumping, then moving to a tactical scenario. You're going to be doing this all the way through, and you're going to get evaluated over and over and over again. I want to say you get evaluated like 12 separate times just individually during FEP. Like, they're individually, you get evaluated on everything that you do, and anything that you do that's unsafe, even if you're not evaluated. Because here's a little peek behind the curtain. There's an instructor, if it's your day to get evaluated as a primary medic, right? There's an instructor that is just looking over your shoulder and he's watching you do medicine. He's got a checklist and he's going, okay, did this, did this, did this, did this. However, if you're the guy over here and the instructor sees you do something unsafe, he's going to go, oh, no, you failed. You're out of here. That's like, even if you're
now
not the
focus is on you.
Now my focus, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted my attention. Now you have it. That's never a good thing. But you're going to be expected to perform to a high level. And I'll tell you what, it is tough. It's heartbreaking to see. And I use that word deliberately. It's heartbreaking to watch a student not be able to figure it out in FTX, or we used to call it FTX in the FEP, because you want everybody to pass at this point. But this is where you have to look like a PJ. This is where the instructor has to look at you and go, this guy knows what he's talking about with mission planning, got on the ground. He accessed his patient in a safe manner. He protected his patient with his tactics the entire time. He stopped that simulated patient from dying. He did the medical procedures I needed him to. He was physically fit enough to drag this patient out or to access the patient in a mountainous environment, tied the appropriate rope system, and was able to get this patient out of the precarious position that you're in. And by the way, you're going to do this in real life. We hang patients over 200-foot walls. We crush patients in cars and flip them upside down, and you have to cut into them. We do all of those. You're going to do all of those things for real. Like, and you're going to have. Yeah,
I was just saying. Apparently, Norwegians, instead of dangling mannequins, actually hang people over cliffs.
Terrifying.
You and I were on one of those training events.
For Jake,
I mean, these dudes literally. We jump into a frozen lake bed. Then we overland through the snow. Luckily, we had some. I'm going to say me. Luckily, I had 3 other individuals. You, Dave, and Nick. I'll just say that. That were breaking trail for my little ass, and all the way
through
up
waist
to the
deep
mountains
snow
and all that kind of stuff in waist deep snow, and yeah, they dangled somebody off the edge of a cliff in a parachute. So yeah, it can happen. And it does, and it will happen.
There was and I'll tell you the instructors. So we send those instructors. They went to a professional moulage course when I was there. We sent them to a Hollywood level moulage course, and the casualties that they can simulate, you will get out there. They'll blow your mind. We actually had a company of contractors that were amputees that would come out and they would play patients for us. Watching a student show up to a moulage patient and they go to like look at their leg and it's not moulage, there is no leg there. No kidding. I had a student look at me and go, dude, there's no leg. And I was like, I was like, I know, you should treat them. And he was like, but dude, there's no leg. I'm like, I know.
The Brits do that too. I remember when we were there and we were working in Fibua village, and those guys, you know, your Chris Dougherty's and those dudes would grab the locals, and they had an Afghani village there and everything like that. And I mean, it was wild, phenomenal training. God,
phenomenal.
It's right. So much, and that's the one thing about this is when you're an operational unit, a lot of times you are responsible for setting up the training, setting up the scenarios, which is great because it's good professional development for you, and you get to tailor make the training like you want it to be, especially if you know that somebody on your team is just like this certain area isn't there, like water ops or something like that, or medical stuff isn't their strong suit, or you notice that, hey, last time they were a little bit weaker on that. So let me set up a scenario or a training event that helps you, but really tests them and get them there. So, right. But when you're in, you know, whether it's Special Tactics Training Squadron or you're in the Pararescue Apprentice course or Combat Control School or whatever, like you are the product. So everything is about you. So all of these scenarios, all of these training events, all the making sure that you meet these certain things is all about you. So all these folks, all these instructors are there for you, and they're setting things up for you. So enjoy that, because later on down the road, you're going to be setting it all up yourself, and you're going to be amazed at, like, man, they were really professional and they really had their stuff together. It's again, you're paid to work out, you're paid to train, you're paid to have fun and be surrounded by a bunch of kick-ass people. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you graduate, you get through the FEP, and it's one of the best, one of the best moments of my career. I distinctly remember standing on that stage down there at Kirtland Air Force Base. The graduation is, it's in a nice hotel in Albuquerque. It's a nice time for the families. Everybody gets dressed up. You're allowed to have as many family members, down as you want. And it's a big party, to be quite honest with you. And it's a culmination of, 2 to 3 years of your life, and more than that. We say 2 years in the pipeline, but, back that up. How long did you train before you got in? How long did you wait before you shipped? Like sometimes this is 4 years for guys to graduate. Getting that command of, blouse your boots, which is something that we're allowed to do. In 1966, the distinctive uniform of the Pararescueman was granted by the United States Air Force, along with a maroon beret for on and off base activities. And we're allowed to blouse our boots and our blues. We're one of the 3 or 4 career fields that can do it. So it's us, SEER, TAC-P, Control, and Special Recon. I think that's it. But you get that command to blouse your boots. You get that command to don the beret, and then along with all the other and by the way, this is like Kirtland is a center of gravity for a lot of the pararescue community. There's a lot of, very decorated PJs that come to these graduations to see the new crop of PJs. Yeah. And they ask you at the end to stand up, and all current pararescuemen, former pararescuemen, and the team, you stand up and you get to say the creed in front of it. And you've said it 1,000 times. You say it when you get to school, you say it when you leave school. You're forced to say it, when we're smoking you and, we want to hear something other than, who yeah, cheese, who yeah, peaches, can't smoke me. Bleh. Yes, I can. And I don't care. We ask you to say it thousands of times before. This one means something. You got a beret on your head in front of everybody. You're saying that you're going to put your own personal desires and comforts second to the mission, that you're going to be prepared at all times to perform your assigned duties quickly and efficiently, that you're going to do these things that others may live. Like that's a big deal. And I remember those words, like it was yesterday. I remember, hugging my friend Dan that was right next to me, and he's the other NCO on the team with me. I remember that event. Anytime I see it, it just gives you chills, because you're like, man, it immediately puts you back to that. You have done it. That feeling of you haven't made it, and there's a lot of fear, right? And you have your assignment, by the way. So during the apprentice course, you know where you're going to go. We're going to talk about assignments here in a second, but usually around air ops, so about halfway through your apprentice course, the assignment list drops. The chief of the unit assigns people to whatever unit they're going to go. So you kind of know, hey, I'm going with this guy that I graduated with, and we're going to the same unit, and we know where we're going. So, and there are people that come there from usually the chief of the Moody unit, the chief of the Vegas unit, your guard folks, all those folks show up. And you get to meet them, and you're like, okay, cool. Like this is a real thing. Your family gets to meet other families. Like if they haven't already, that's a big deal. And that's really cool. So the Pararescue Apprentice course, I can't say enough about it. Professional organization, run professionally by just absolute hitters of experienced dudes and dudettes. There's a huge staff of folks that are there just focusing on you. And, it's one of the best times of your life for sure.
Yeah. And that spans across any of the graduations, whether it's CCT, TAC-P, SR, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers. Like it is a very common feeling because you spent so much time training and dedicating your time and your mind really to this. And there's a good chance that you've sacrificed some relationships, some friendships, along
you
the
have
way.
to.
That's fine, because, if they're not there for you to support you in every aspect, then maybe they don't belong there with you. When you're donning that beret and blousing those boots.
Yeah. And it's, you build a ton of, bonds, like bonds forged through adversity. And sometimes it's not like adversity. It's God, I was on casual status for 4 months. I sat around and did nothing, and I just worked out, and I barely got through it. It was just so boring, and I felt like there was nothing to do. And, you're still in the military. There's still hurry up and wait. You're still going to have to do CBTs. Somebody's still going to yell at you about your whatever CBT you haven't done. Like, where's your cyber awareness? I'm not supposed to let this person in. Damn it, Frank. I don't want your mixtape, like ridiculous. But
I don't want your mixtape.
Yeah. Remember that? It's on. I love that. It's like, hey, here's a CD. Would you like to put this in your government computer? No, Frank.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want your mixtape.
I don't know, because I'm actually due for it. I got the alert.
You got to take the new one's awful. Let me tell you, it's terrible. Oh God. Anyway, but yeah, so that culminates at the PJ Apprentice course, and then you're going to go out to your units.
Yeah, and there's quite a few different places that you can go. And I know that we'll kind of hit this in depth in another almost like a part 2 type episode. But there's PJs are all Air Force Special Operation or Air Force Special Warfare.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is like a mom and dad, if you will, in terms of major commands. You get some PJs that will end up going to Special Operations Command. You get some PJs that will go to Air Combat Command, and a PJ is a PJ, but there's different funding, there's different mission sets, there's different equipment, aircraft, that each of those, whether it's SOCOM or Air Combat Command, that they fall under and do. And it's also assignment based too. Yeah, there are bases like Kadena, Japan, Mildenhall in the United Kingdom, that
Aviano over in Italy.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So there's two units in Oki. There's Aviano, and then there's England. Those are your overseas assignments that you can get. I went, luckily that's where I met Peaches. Is I went directly to not only AFSOC but over to the 321st over in England, and it wasn't a performance thing. It was just I was a staff sergeant that had another job behind me, and at the time, honestly, it was Chief Colon Lopez. So the SEAC was actually the commandant of the school as I went through, and he's the one that decided where I was going. He had just made chief at the time, so he decided where I was going, and he was like, "Hey, they had a spot over there, and you're just a little bit older, a little bit more mature, so we're gonna put you over to the STS." So, just a note on assignments, it's needs of the Air Force, right? So most likely you're going to go to the ACC commands and what we call the Big Three, which is about to be the Big Two. So the Big Three, as it stands right this second, are DM, Vegas, and Moody. So Davis-Monthan, that's in Arizona, so near Tucson, Arizona. DM, Vegas, which is Las Vegas, Nevada. It's at Nellis Air Force Base. And then Moody Air Force Base, Georgia, is in Valdosta. So it's the 38th at Moody, the 48th at DM, and the 58th at Vegas, respectively. That is most likely where you're going to go. Vegas is actually going away. So in the next calendar year, Vegas is no longer going to be a unit. And that's going to get split between Davis-Monthan and Tucson, or near Tucson area. So Davis-Monthan and then Valdosta, Georgia are going to be the two big hubs for the Air Combat Command here stateside. That is most likely where you're going because those units are huge. We're talking hundreds of PJs work there, as opposed to when Peaches and I were in England, there were 11 PJs that worked at the 321st. That was it. They've plussed up a little bit since then, but
on a good day.
On a good day, right? So on the ACC side of the house, that's most likely where you're going to go. There is a possibility that you can go overseas. There's a possibility that you can go to Aviano, Italy, which is where the rescue unit is over there. The 56th is over at Aviano, Italy, or you could go to Oki. So Oki, Okinawa, Japan, has a rescue squadron that works there. So those are on the Air Combat Command side of the house. That is where you're going to go. Most likely, it's going to be Moody or DM, with the possibility, if you're going to stay on the rescue side, to go over there. A cool thing about being in the apprentice course is they'll let you trade orders. We saw this all the time. I had a friend that was married with kids that got orders to Moody, but they had friends and family and a larger support system that lived in DM, and you're able to trade in certain circumstances. He could trade orders. He traded with one of my teammates, and he went to DM to be closer to his family. That's totally a thing, right? So that's the ACC side of the house. AFSOC also needs PJs. So the Special Operations Command also needs PJs. So you can go to any one of the 2 series, what we call the 2 series units. So the 2-1 in North Carolina, the 2-2 at Joint Base Lewis McChord, the 2-3 at Hurlburt Field, Florida, or the 2-6 at Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico. Those are the 4 places that you could possibly go if AFSOC needs PJs. Yes, you can go to an STS right out the gate. It happens frequently. It doesn't happen every single class because there are more slots in ACC than there are in AFSOC, but it can happen. You also can go overseas. You can go to the 321st, which is in England. That's the 321st Special Tactics Squadron in England and East Anglia down at RAF Mildenhall. Right. Shout out to Beck Row. That's where I used to stomp around, dog. Shout out to Hollywell Row. What's up? Or you can go to Oki. Oki has an STS as well. So there's both a rescue and an STS at Oki. That's where you can go leaving the pipeline, right? It's most likely you're going to go to an ACC, but you can totally go to an STS. And those are the 4 spots that you can go. A PJ is a PJ is a PJ. We have the same capability and skill set. There is no special training to go to an STS. There is no special selection to go to an STS. You're just going to be doing different mission sets, and you're going to learn different ways to give that capability to the unit that you're going to. So there's different flavors even at different units. You know, Vegas trains to different stuff than Cocoa Beach does because Cocoa Beach does NASA space shuttle recovery. And the folks in, the 321st, they train differently than the people in DM because the people of the 321st need to do Arctic environment. You're going to go to Norway and work with their special operators like Peaches and I were talking about earlier. You're going to go do different mission sets. So you need to learn how to give that PJ capability to whatever unit, whatever mission set you're going to. So people get all wrapped up about the STS versus rescue, and then Guard and Reserve is a whole different animal. If you're going to be a PJ at Alaska as their, in their stateside mission, that's a little bit different than being a PJ down at Moffett Air Force Base. Moffett Air Force Base is doing open ocean rescues where they're jumping in from low altitudes and getting onto bigger boats and, recovering the vessels and doing some wild stuff off in the Pacific out there. And Alaska is doing these backwoods, people get attacked by a bear and you and one other PJ jump into the backcountry, to stop a human from dying. You look at what Patrick is doing. Patrick is recovering astronauts. And all of the things that, treating somebody that just came back from space and then landed in the ocean in a capsule is completely different than the other 2 missions, right? But those are all PJs. That's a great part about being a pararescueman is that you get to figure out how to work with all of these teams and what you bring to the fight. But it can be wildly different depending on, you could be at the 2-3 STS and you could be thinking, oh man, I'm going to be doing nothing but, support to tiered units, and I'm going to be working with special forces teams, and they're going to give me to a SEAL team. And then an earthquake happens in Haiti, and a day later, you're searching through rubble and running mass casualty sites or helping them open an airfield. Or maybe you're a New York PJ and you're like, oh, I'm going to be doing, New York is where the perfect storm happened. So you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go work these open ocean rescues. And then COVID happens and you're working as a provider in a COVID intensive care unit. Like that's crazy stuff that we've been able to get into. So you never know what you're going to be faced with.
It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right?
It is. Yeah. And like that guy, Dan, that I graduated with, that I've told a story about, like he's a crow now. Dan is an absolute shit magnet. Like he's just one of those guys where it's like, if anything, Dan had 2 successive deployments to Afghanistan that I think I turned him over both of these times. One of them, he responded to a big base attack that happened on Bastion. He was part of the team from Alaska that stopped the base attack and shot the dudes that were trying to attack. And then his next deployment, he went to Afghanistan, and his big mission there was an avalanche rescue. So you hear Afghanistan, you're like, oh, it's got to be some gunfight. He was with the SEALs. Like this guy was out there. There was a huge avalanche that he just happened to respond to, and he was the team leader that worked through recovering all those folks, like hundreds of people on this mountain pass in Afghanistan. If you've
been to Afghanistan, you've seen those mountains, you can kind of believe it. But it's it's a phenomenal job, phenomenal mission, and
yeah,
it I wish I didn't have a heart out because I'd like to keep going. But, I would love to bring up what's the day to day like?
I love it.
You throw what you just talked about between Alaska, Moffett guys in California, New York, the Cocoa Beach guys, and then the Hurlburt Field with hurricanes and earthquakes, stuff like that. Like every day is different when it comes to training, and every day could be different when it comes to operational stuff because you never know what you're going to jump into. Like you really don't.
Yep. So, and we could talk about that in a part 2, but that's the PJ pipeline, baby.
Part 2. There you go. All right, cool. Well, everybody, appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review. If you got questions on the pipeline, send us a DM. We are more than happy to answer those things. And our goal is to help support you, provide you the information that you need to give you the best chances to enter the pipeline. If you're not about to enter the pipeline and you're just still deciding to listen to us, hey, right on. We appreciate your support. And we're out here.
Yeah. Train hard. Play.